And this is a lesson I had to learn for myself. So just realize that you are enough. You are lovable. You are wonderful. You can have what you want and what you need for yourself. And don't be afraid to go get it. And if you need to talk to me or anybody else, we're here to support each other, but just know that you're enough and you can have the great life you want.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author who's returning. When we got the emails back and forth to make this today happen, I'm like, something sounds really familiar here. It's part of my author's story that's on as a guest today. And then I went back and in the archives of all Living the Next Chapter podcast, we had the chance to interact once already. And now I get to reconnect with a past guest. Makes me super happy to have Joanne on the podcast. And I'm so excited to have her come on, talk about her new projects, what she's working on, catch us up to date on all things Joanne. So welcome, Joanne, to Living the Next Chapter. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's very exciting.
Right. So good to have you back. Yeah. For those that haven't met you yet, where are you in this big world of ours?
I'm in Portland, Oregon, Northwest Portland.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. And you've been writing for quite some time, and you have a very interesting, when I say interesting, you define the word interesting background, and you have some great stories to share.
Thank you.
You've been writing for a while, so
I have.
Tell us a little bit, give us an overview of kind of some of the things you've been writing, and we're going to talk more about the more recent stuff.
Okay. I started writing right before COVID hit because many years ago, I used to speak on the UFO conference circuit, and a new friend that I met several years back, I think in 2010 or 12, had said, because at the time I was speaking about my then husband's military experiences. And then she said, well, when's the next story coming out? And I said, well, he always comes out with news. No, I mean your story. I was like, well, I don't have anything to write. Oh, yes, you do. When's your story coming out? And that got me started. And it took me several years, but that got me started on really writing out my story. And as a former Mormon, I had done lots of family history and had written parts of my biography or autobiography several times. So I had lots of notes and lots of journals to refer to. But I did my first memoir about my marriages and then how I changed my life in my 40s. And, I left the Mormon church and embraced a lot of new passions. And that kind of got the ball rolling. So.
Awesome. So how long have you been writing? If you look back, when did you start?
I started writing that first book in, I would say, notes for it, ever since I met her and whenever it was. Okay. And then I really started writing the book in about 2019 because before COVID, I met up again with, I met up with a person who had been a bookkeeping client for a while. And then she was facilitating a writing group. I guess that's the right word for it. And so I decided to join because I thought, that could be good at this moment. And we got together. I think we did a little meditation and maybe we had a writing prompt, and we were also sharing about our current projects and things and shared with what we were writing. And, that was a way for me to start really putting it on paper and getting some feedback. And because I started with the woo stuff first, they thought I was a little, we don't get it. And then I said, well, let me go chronologically. And then I started with the life and then the marriages and then the woo, and then they got it. And they go, oh yeah, this is okay. So I was like, okay, I think I'll keep going on this. And then, COVID happened and I just kept writing, and I moved away from where I was living and I kept writing. And, spring of 2021, I had that first book out. So
good.
Yeah.
Awesome. How many books do you have out currently, including your most recent one?
Just the two. But I've got an idea for number 3. Number 3 is starting to gel.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah, that's going to be even more exciting. But yeah, just the 2, and the second one comes out at the end in just a few weeks. So
wow,
I know.
Okay, so let's go there. What's the newest project? What are you putting out in the world?
It's called "The Prince Was Wrong: Leaving the Narcissist Behind." I know. I love the title. Husband number 7 turned out to be a flaming narcissist. And in the first 20 years, we were together 25 years. In the first 20 years, I didn't really see that. I didn't know that word. I just thought, oh, we're getting along really well. But we're getting along really well because I'm following his agenda and listening to his great ideas, about what we should do with his house and his creative projects and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then COVID hit, and I decided I really hated living, because he's in prison. So I was living in his house. And I decided I really didn't like living in that big house and pouring all my money into it and being by myself and listening to all the trees creak and scaring me, and it was just draining. And my sister and my daughter and my acupuncturist was like, you're not doing well. And, you really should stop paying for all this stuff. So all this stuff made me start really looking. And I started looking at, I really need to change some things with my life and my marriage. And I need to start speaking up about what wasn't working for me. And I moved from California to Oregon. So that really helped. But then he immediately thought I was leaving him and getting a divorce. I go, no, I didn't say divorce. I just said I needed to leave the house, and I left it in the care of a house sitter. So we thought everything was going okay, and that the house sitter didn't work out, but that's a long story. But the house was being cared for. And then it just all this back and forth, and I started, I started speaking up for myself. And in the world of a narcissist, that's a terrible thing to do. And you don't dare speak about what you want, because it always has to be about what they want. And the interesting thing is, and this is kind of where my woo comes in, because I've really developed my intuition over the years since I've known him, which was great. But right before COVID hit, I took a class on psychic development. And it was like a 2-day workshop. So that was just lovely. It was lovely. And the world hadn't quite shut down yet. I'm not sure if we were even starting to wear masks yet. But, and then like our closing exercise was, think of something you want to cut the cord with in your life that's not working. And to me, it was my relationship the way it is was not working. Even though divorce hadn't really come into my head. And so I did that energetic cord cutting thingy. And then I started speaking up for myself. And, I was telling him, it's like, well, and then COVID hit. So then I was just about to tell him all this stuff in person, because we were going to have a 2-day visit. And I thought, okay, I'm Joanne, you're going to really, go for it. And then we couldn't see each other for a year. And so that was awful. But and we always wrote, even when we saw each other every week, we were writing to each other pretty much every day. But I soon learned that we weren't really talking about the hard stuff or the nitty gritty. And I certainly wasn't bringing up, every now and then I would, bring up, it's like, well, so, why did we get married? Why did you want to marry me? Why do you like me? He wasn't ever big on compliments. And, and I don't need to be plied with compliments every day, all the time. It's like I'm fine with who I am, but it's nice to have your spouse tell you every now and then what they like about you. I thought that was normal. Well, yeah. And then in our whole untangling business, he would finally say, well, guys just don't say that. I'm going, well, why not? Because, yeah, guys, if I'm with you, I love you. It's like, if I'm with you, I shouldn't have to tell you all this stuff. It's like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. And he could never tell me why he liked me. And I knew we got married mostly for political reasons, because in prison, it's better if the inmate has a wife instead of just a girlfriend. Because if I needed to advocate for something that was not going well, it sounds better coming from a wife. They don't care what a girlfriend thinks, but a wife has more clout. So I knew going into it, this is a man with life without prison. Okay, I'd already been married 6 times. There were lousy marriages. And so he's this interesting man. I really liked him, and we got along really well. And so, I can do this. And he had thought he thought when we first met, he thought he'd get out in a few years, but that's never happened. So anyway, it was just this, this, in the first few years of COVID, it was like up and down roller coaster of me trying to explain to him what I needed and what I wanted in our relationship. And it was just like, and then he would just bombard me with really mean stuff in his letters. It's like, well, it's like a good wife should be grateful that she's got this house she's living in, that her husband has allowed her to live in. And it's like, the house is over 100 years old. I'm pouring all my money into it. You're not paying a dime. He paid $500 once to help me fix a hole in the roof. I put thousands of dollars into that house over 20 some odd years. And I might get paid back. Finally, I might get reimbursed. But it's just his sense of logic. It's like a good wife should be, happy that her husband's put her up in this house in this really nice neighborhood. I go, I'm the only prison wife in this county, because it's unless you live in the low income neighborhoods, which the house was not in. It's like, you need a high income to live there and pay for everything. And it's a really old house. And it's on a 1/4 acre. So it needs upkeep and da-da-da-da. And I was making good money with my business, but it's not enough if you live in that county. You need 2 or 3 times that. And it was like, I am the only prison wife coming from this county. Does that tell you something? I don't see, I see one other person coming from that county, but she's a girlfriend. Okay. And if there's anybody else from this county, they probably live in the low income district, which is, nothing against them or anything, but it's like, they're not dealing with the house that I'm trying to deal with for you. One of his lines was, well, you worked on your, because it took me a while before I actually told him I was writing a book, because he's supposedly the prolific writer in the family. And I published 2 of his books. They didn't do very well, but, I figured it was because I wasn't very good at marketing. And I wasn't going to go all over the state trying to push his book. And but things were a lot different before. There wasn't even print on demand when I first published his books. It was like, and we published thousands. And it's like, okay, now they're sitting in storage. And what can I throw them out now? But it was interesting. So it's like at first, I sent him a copy of the book. Oh, this is really well written. I really like your little art book. It's like, that sounds like that sounds like not like a compliment, but I let it go. And then later, as we were splitting up, it's like, well, you wrote your book, or your book wasn't good timing for me, because yes, it puts him in line as number 7 after a bunch of losers, but he just thought I made him out to look like a loser. No, book number 1 didn't do that. You got 3 chapters, basically. One, how we met, why we got married, or how we got married, and what it was like being a prison wife, which isn't always glorious. Come on, there's some downsides to being a prison wife, and all the cool things that you introduced me to. And but it wasn't good timing, supposedly, for his legal remedies that he was always trying to work on. And it's like, okay. And, you used all this money on your book that, and you turned your back on my creative projects. Like, no, I used my money, even though it's community property technically. But I also used all my money for your house, which is not community property, because you inherited it before we got married. So there's a... Yeah. So, and then there was other things like, you started your business in my house and turned your back on all my projects. I'm going, well, my income from my business that I built up paid for all our bills and paid for not all his prison expenses, because he had outside family that was helping, but it was like, it paid for the house, and he didn't have a mortgage, but it paid for all the repairs and a couple of remodel things and just different projects that he wanted done. It was all his idea. It wasn't any of my ideas. Like, sure, that sounds like a great idea. Okay, let's make that happen. And then there was also an issue of, I said, you're not really affectionate with me. And there's times when we got like 2 days together in an apartment and you still don't want to be you should have tried to be prettier. It's like, okay, if that's the last straw about you telling me I'm overweight because I was overweight. I mean, I'm still overweight, but I've lost a lot of weight since I left him. Like, I tend to lose weight when I'm happier.
Yeah.
But he was always on my case about weight and stuff like that. So it was like, you should have tried to be prettier. It's like, am I ugly? and I'm your wife, and I'm coming to visit you for 25 years in prison. Excuse me.
Right. Who's making sacrifices here, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. And that all, went into, we spent almost 3 years trying to untangle this. It's like I moved out of California in July of 2020, and the book came out the following spring. And we got the divorce in early 23. So our divorce has now been final for a year. But, even when I left, it's like divorce wasn't in the picture. We were having all these up and downs, trying to see if we could make it work. And, we keep writing, there would be mean. And then, okay, let's take a step back and let's look at, it's like I'm thinking, okay, how can I compromise? I don't think he ever really tried to compromise, but it's like, how can I compromise to like placate him into thinking, okay, not trying to fool him, but it's like, let's see how we can work together. Are there projects, just to kind of get back on a creative path? And it just never worked, because then we'd get mad about something else. And then I would ask him all these questions. It's like, well, you told me you sold this thing that was going to help pay for stuff, but I never saw evidence that it sold, and you wouldn't tell me how much it sold for. So it's like there were always secrets. And he's a very secretive man, and I can't stand that. I don't need to know everything about somebody's life, but, if we're married, I should kind of know about the money. I should know about the money. At least most of it. If it's going to affect me, he didn't want to tell me. And so to this day, I still don't have any evidence or real knowledge that even happened, that asset sold. And so it's like, well, I'm just going to assume you have no money. And so our divorce was based on, okay, everybody assumes all their own debts, and I'm in heavy debt because of him, because I was paying for all this stuff. And okay, so I'm taking on all my own debt, which, and you don't get my car, you don't get any of my stuff, and I don't get any of your stuff. And, it was just the most amicable divorce on paper. Everybody keeps their own stuff. Nobody takes on anybody's debt. Nobody owes each other any support. I made sure that he could not go after my small retirement savings that I have, which I started way too late. But, it's like, it was just kind of done. And in Oregon, it was so much easier to get a divorce than in California, because I've had a few of those. And once he got the papers and signed them, he's returned them and signed them back. And a couple of weeks later, the divorce was final. So I was on a cruise, because I got the opportunity to go on a cruise last spring with my sister and her husband, because they were celebrating their 50th anniversary, and I was celebrating about to be divorced. And I get the email from my lawyer while I'm there. Your divorce is final. It's like, hallelujah, let's have a toast.
There you go.
I know.
It's good.
It's good. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. But it took a long time to unwind things. And like I said, finally, I think the money piece is going to happen. Things are finally in place. And so I'm really hoping that continues to move forward, and I finally get paid what I need to get paid to reimburse me for all those things I paid for. And but my life's on a good track, and I'm going to retire, kind of. I'm going to cut way back from the bookkeeping, because I have other things I want to do, and start having more fun. And I have another cruise planned for next year, and I've got another book in my head. And because of the new book, I wrote it because it was really part of my healing journey. And one of the editors from my first book, she also had a narcissistic spouse, and we were just kind of joking that, that should be like your next book. Like, huh? And then it really gelled. And so when I was on that cruise, I really started to put that into work, and I started working with a book coach, which was a phenomenal, wonderful, helpful experience. And it made the editing go so much easier with my my publishers. Like, they whipped through the edits really nicely. But so it just kind of fell into place. And he knew I was writing a scathing book, according to him. It's like, well, I didn't write it out of revenge. I didn't write it because I'm mad at you. You're you're a narcissist, and people need to know about narcissism. And it seems to be a huge problem these days. And, I've learned a lot about the problem. It can affect anybody it could be your spouse, it could be your friend, it could be your work colleague, your kid, your parent. So it's like even when I hear my grandchildren speak to their mother really disrespectfully, I don't say you're talking like well, I think maybe one time I said, you're talking like so-and-so. And, you don't want to go down that road. You talk nicer to your friends than you do to your mom. It's like,
yeah.
Because even though they might not be narcissists, I don't want them to think that kind of talking and bullying and gaslighting your parent is okay, because they certainly wouldn't do that to their friends.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that to your mom.
It's not only just confined to a romantic relationship between partners, but it can be anything, right? I love that you've expanded that beyond just what we would traditionally think of a couple.
Yeah, right? And I always thought that's what it was, but it wasn't. And it was interesting because my therapist lives in my neighborhood, and she's got a lovely, just a sandwich board sign out on her corner, and she's got this big heart, and then has the name of her therapy practice in her name and column. It's like, and she specializes in people going through narcissistic abuse. It's like, oh, that's what it is. It just finally hit me. In fact, that's what it is. And I've worked with her, probably almost 4 years. And I will continue to work with her for a while, because now she's more hearing about the joys and the dating experiences and, the current cool things that are, the ups and downs, but it's a lot more joy than rage that I was, going through in the early parts of working with her. But out of this whole book writing process for this particular book, I realized that it's like, oh, there's people that could use my support and my help. And not that I'm going to start this huge coaching business, because I'm not, but I'm going to put myself out there as like a peer support person, maybe do some healing groups, because I really feel the need. This was such a big part of my healing journey, and I'm creating a journal to go. I journal all the time, but I'm creating like a little healing journal to go with the book if people want to use it, because, put your thoughts down, and there's different ways people need to go through their healing. But, I just want to be there. If you would just want to talk to me or get some insight, and, I got a little poster about the red flags of narcissistic abuse, and, people are toxic relationships, and all of mine have been toxic apparently. And it's a problem. And I want to help people either see that they can get out of that, or at least you can heal. If you can't get out of it, you can heal from it and create your better life. And that's where I'm at. I couldn't be happier. And, yes, I'm seeing retirement or semi-retirement. I'm looking towards this. Oh, I've got some healing work I can help with, because I get on other groups and, classes and things and networking opportunities, and people hear what I'm doing. It's like, oh, do I need to see a therapist about that? I go, maybe you do. Or, they're resonating with what I've been doing. And I've made a lot of new friends. Unfortunately, we've all been dealing with narcissists, but, now I have this group of people who we understand each other, and we're supporting each other. So,
yeah. What are some of those red flags that you mentioned that stand out to you?
Yeah, the bullying, the gaslighting, the not complimenting you on anything, perhaps mine was this one. He was not physically abusive, but very verbally abusive. He wouldn't have hit me or anything, but he could make you feel like 2 inches tall with just 5 words, pretty much. And a couple times in the public visiting room, he did that to me. And it's like, oh, this is not comfortable. And okay, well, don't cry. You can't cry here in the visiting room. And don't get up and embarrass me and go to the bathroom and cry. It's like, excuse me? Sometimes it was financial irresponsibility. And clearly I have that with him. And a lot of it was just like nothing. They try and make you feel like you are wrong all the time. They're never wrong. And it's always your fault. And you're just, a doormat. pretty much. And I just, I won't do that ever again. And even, I tried to tell him in person, I tried to tell him, and in letters, it's like, you're not always right. Well, what makes you say that? Everybody loves my solutions. It's like, no, we really don't. But everybody kind of goes along with you because you're so, I'm a military commander and I'm smart and I know everything and, I'm important. And I go, yes, you are in certain things and you really do good things in certain things. But there's a reason probably why you never got married. You had a lot of girlfriends and you had a lot of kids, but, they probably wouldn't have wanted to stay married to you very long either.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
for someone listening then, Joanne, how can your book help them in their situation? What kind of things are you hoping they learn or discover about themselves that can help them get out of this kind of situation?
Sure. The book talks about how we met, especially because he's in prison, but how we met and that kind of stuff. But then through my examples of, especially because we were dealing with the house and then relationship things, like what kind of the examples I used. So it shows examples of narcissistic abuse because I had 3 years of his mean letters. So I have it all in writing. I have them. I kept them. I threw away all the old letters that I left in California, but I kept these 3 years of mean letters. And so I have quoted them in the book. So there's numerous examples of the kinds of things he would say and how I would counter that and how we just kept going back and forth. So they'll learn by examples of what I went through, and maybe that's similar to what they're going through. People are also going to see, how I navigated the whole divorce type of thing, and also how I started taking care of myself and how I became strong enough to stand up for myself. And, I just keep telling people, it's like, I let the Leo out of the cage because I am a Leo and I'm not afraid to let her out of the cage. And she's out there. And, I have this, when I give other I have this really long list of all the things that I do to take care of myself and that I had to learn about, being strong. And, you don't have to be mean back, but you can stand up for yourself. And by all means, if they're being physically abusive, especially, get the heck out or call the cops. I never called the cops with a former physically abusive spouse. And that was really wrong. So I thought, oh, no, he'll stop. But, you have to stand up for and take your, get a therapist, even if your spouse or whoever it won't go to therapy with you, because none of my spouses would ever go to therapy with me. But and so I have a long list of how to take care of yourself. And, just think, here's the one thing, especially because this kind of all came together during COVID. It's like, and my daughter was going through a breakup too. It's like, so we sat down separately, but we have our bucket lists of what we want in our ideal relationship. And I'd never really done that before. So it's like, I have a very long list. I'm getting very picky. And I don't expect my partner to hit all those lists, but I'm getting very picky. And I don't stay chatting with somebody very long on a dating app anymore if I know they're not going to meet, most of those boxes. And, because why bother? I'm getting older. It's like, I don't need to rush into a relationship, but I need it to be the right relationship.
Yeah, I think if we invest time in figuring out what good looks like to us in our relationships or what we want in life, that helps us to be a little more focused and to go after the right things. Right?
Exactly. And part of that is healing. So if I hadn't taken the time to heal, and I'll always be working on that, and I'll always be working on improving myself. But if I hadn't taken the time to work on that and really figure out what I want, then I wouldn't be in a better place to attract the right kind of person, and the kind of person who is on the spiritual level, that I'm on and what I want, so, yeah.
I like it. So the book, Joanne, how do we find everything? I do have another question to wrap up here at the end.
Okay, yeah.
How do we connect with you? And because I know there's going to be people curious, they want to know more about you. Maybe they want you as a speaker at an event or
that would be
something
lovely.
online.
I have a brand new website. Thank you for asking. It's just my name, Joanne Fawcett, FAWCETT.com. So on there is all the how to get a hold of me stuff. And my email is, there's an info at Joanne Fawcett. There's a Joanne at Joanne Fawcett. They can sign up to be on my email list. So then they'll be hearing updates pre-sales for this book start on the 18th of June. The ebook gets released on June 25th. The print book will be released July 9th. There's going to be a live interview between myself and my publisher kind of on the launch day on June 25th. So that's all very exciting. And I know it's going to be, they're going to get it distributed to Amazon and all the proper places and all that stuff. I'm on, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. So I've been doing little promotions, and they can see the cover of the book is just, I'm so in love with the cover of the book because it looks just like him. Sorry.
Good.
And it's coming out right before his birthday. So, karma's a bitch, and I don't want to say revenge is sweet because I'm not doing this to be mean, but, So yes, I'm very easy to reach.
Okay. So as we wrap up, Joanne, for those people that are in this environment, they're feeling kind of made like really small, like you mentioned, and it's time for them to get big again. Just speak some courage for people, because I think that's maybe one of the things we lack when we're talked down to or put down. We lose our courage. I would love for you to help us build up our courage as a listener.
Oh, that's lovely.
What do we need to hear today that we can put into place and start the journey to get to where you are? What do we need to know?
And this is a lesson I had to learn for myself. So just realize that you are enough. You are lovable. You are wonderful. You can have what you want and what you need for yourself. And don't be afraid to go get it. And if you need to talk to me or anybody else, we're here to support each other. But just know that you're enough and you can have the great life you want.
It's amazing. Joanne, thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on this book and future endeavors.
There will be another.
So my offer to you, and now I've had you now for 2 books, 2 times as a guest, come back in the future and let's celebrate your new projects as they come out, and let's get an update from you.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Everyone, all the information, as always, in the show notes. We'll even link this episode to Joanne's past episodes. You can kind of hear even more of her story. A very fascinating guest.
Thank you.
If you're a podcaster and you're looking for a great guest for your show, reach out to Joanne. If you're looking for a speaker, reach out to Joanne. And if you just want to talk to a great person, reach out to Joanne. Thank you, Joanne, for being part of this.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Take care.
Hey, thanks for listening to Living the Next Chapter. I'm glad you stayed all the way to the end. You're my new bestie. And the one thing I like to do with my besties is enjoy time together over a cup of coffee. Now, one thing missing in the equation is my coffee cup is empty. And what I would love if, after 390 plus episodes roughly, if you found any value in the podcast and you want to say, hey, Dave, do you need a refill of your coffee cup? I'm looking at it right now, and you know what? It's looking kind of sad. There's not much in the coffee cup. If you want to help support the podcast, I would love you forever as besties and celebrate coffee with you. You can celebrate and support the show at our website using our Buy Me a Coffee link. And all the money goes back into the podcast. And we also like to give it to other podcasters. So if you want to support the show, head over to livingthenextchapter.com and let's top it up. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening. Cheers.